So, our next speaker is Jessica Ice, shining a light into the data darkness of venture capital and equality. So Jessica is a market analyst for Jumpstart. She coordinates biannual entrepreneurial services program survey and supports Jumpstart's mission by providing data-driven evaluations of their ongoing work. Prior to Jumpstart, Jessica has a pretty awesome background. She worked as a senior research analyst in external outreach and regional analytics at the Federal Reserve Bank. Prior to that, Jessica served as an e-learning trainee at the United Nations Institute for Training and Research and held several positions of increasing responsibility at the Group IT Services Department in Zurich. She has a bachelor's degree in international politics and history from Jacobs University Bremen and a master's degree in management economics from the University of Zurich. So we have a round of applause for Jessica.
Sorry, I did not realize he was going to read all of that. I'm a little embarrassed now. And it's really not all that impressive. But hi everyone. I'm Jessica with Jumpstart. I'm going to be talking about equality and venture capital. I know before we were talking about equity. I know there's a difference between equity and equality. Unfortunately, in this case, we're kind of focusing at equality, and hopefully we'll get to equity. Thank you. So just as a kind of baseline for me, how many people have worked in venture capital, interacted with venture capital, know what venture capital is? Kind of show of hands. All right, yeah, that's great. So just to sort of set the line, so venture capital really comes into play when you're starting a business and you just have an idea. Maybe you have an idea on your napkin. Maybe you get some funding from your friends and family. You start going, and then all of a sudden you really need money to start your business. That's when venture capital comes in. So important characteristics to know about venture capital: incredibly risky. Most startups fail. And also, there's a lot of room for subjectivity, right? This is, you're making a ton of assumptions about your market, about your business. There's not a lot of data to really make those decisions, so there's a lot of room for bias in making decisions. So that's why I think it's such an important part, or thing to talk about. So let's sort of start with what we know. Venture capital is mostly white and mostly male. The data doesn't lie, right? So what you see, the green is the total workforce. That's everyone from the janitorial staff up to CEOs that work in venture capital firms. These are firms providing capital to companies. And then the blue is people that are actually making decisions about investments. So now your eyes are not deceiving you. There is not enough African Americans represented in venture partners to actually have them on the chart. 0. So yeah, this is the Midwest. Unfortunately, if you look at the nation as a whole, it is the same. So, where you can find this is the National Venture Capital Association. They do a human capital survey of all of their partners. That's where this data is coming from. So it's quite a wide survey. And I think that venture capital is also a pretty good example of the glass ceiling here. So overall, the workforce is, you're trying to get around 40% women, but in the people actually making decisions, 10% are women. So there's I would say it's a rather homogeneous group that are making these decisions right now. And what gets even trickier is when, oops, can I just, did I turn it off maybe? Oops. Yeah, that would be wonderful, thank you. What gets even trickier is when you actually look at where the capital goes. So, I'm a market analyst, I'm doing data analysis, so we're always questions about, who's actually getting this capital? It's really hard to find. You can go to PitchBook and you can slice and dice and find out, average venture capital raised by industry, by region, by state, by type of venture. As soon as you want to talk about race or gender, there's not much there. So the kind of, so again, National Venture Capital Association is trying to do a lot of work in this area. So they did a project with Crunchbase, and this is their survey of 14,000 entrepreneurs. They found that in 2014, about 17.9 of the companies that received funding were founded, or had at least one female founder. Oh, thank you so much. had at least one female founder. So there's definitely some issues there. This doesn't at all address how much capital is actually getting deployed. This is just, number. And then another really prominent statistic within the venture world that people love to throw out is that only 1% of funded companies have an African American founder. Now, again, something that we've learned in this data days is you always want to check your sources, because if you look at where this came from, it was actually only a survey of 165 companies in 3 states that were funded over a 6-month period. So, take that with a grain of salt. However, there's so little data available. This stat was used by the White House, by all sorts of news outlets. And so, that sort of shows how little data there is out there about these issues. So, why am I here today? Because I work for something called the Entrepreneurial Services Program. I work for Jumpstart, which is part of the Entrepreneurial Services Program, which is a network of organizations, these 13 organizations, supported by the state of Ohio through the Ohio Third Frontier, which is a very large fund to promote economic development. I realize that for entrepreneurs this can get quite confusing, but essentially the whole idea here is that these organizations work together to get a large grant to give services and capital to entrepreneurs. So kind of a side effect that happened was because we have a grant, we have a lot of grant requirements that we have to report on. So we end up getting pretty good and interesting data that we can use to help with decision making and address these issues. So when a lot of these issues started coming to the fore, especially when National Venture Capital Association started focusing, and some of the equity issues in venture capital became more and more apparent, Jumpstart and certainly the whole network was like, well, what do we see in our data? Not great. Not great. So this is the average deal size for minorities and non-minorities. So the red is the non-minority and the beige is the minority, and males and females. There seems to be a gap there. Not looking too good. So yeah, so for the difference between minority and non-minority is over $500,000. It was in the average deal size. This was just for our clients. So this is tech-based companies in Northeast Ohio, and they have to have really received at least 20 hours of service from one of the organizations you saw on the previous page. But still, that's between 350 and 450 companies. So this is more than was even surveyed in the previous statistic. So, and for females and males, the gap was over $860,000 in the average deal size. So that's a problem. Now, what did Taylor say this morning? Data doesn't create solutions. That is absolutely true. So what happened? The leadership at these organizations took this data, and they said, this is a problem and we have to do something about it. And they had the courage to stand up and say, okay, we see that there's an issue here, and we're going to actually create programs to address it. So these are a few. I mean, it really was a network effort, but these are a few of the programs that I want to highlight. The Focus Fund was created by Jumpstart, a $10 million fund exclusively for women and minority-owned companies. The Core City Cleveland program, you have some flyers on your desk, definitely check those out. It's a program specifically targeted for individuals within the core city of Cleveland, for businesses that are meant to benefit the core city of Cleveland. So that's the equity on both sides that we were talking about earlier. And they have, it's everything from office hours, to an impact program that's 12 weeks that teaches you all the aspects of starting a business, really tailored towards individuals from disadvantaged communities. And then the Youngstown Business Incubator also has the Women in Entrepreneurship program, the WE program, that brings together women entrepreneurs to discuss the issues that they have, and really focuses on trying to encourage more women to be in entrepreneurship, getting more access to capital. So, I mean, of course I'm here from Jumpstart, so I'm excited to say that those programs actually really did start to move the needle. So from 2014, which was when I started focusing on this, until today, the average gap was reduced by about $470,000 for each of the categories. Yeah, it was really fun. I mean, it does take time, I think we were talking about in one of the sessions earlier is that you got to invest in your communities like you invest in your children. So if you put some money in this and you expect results in 6 months, it's probably not going to happen. But really having a concentrated effort, having multiple people work on it, they really seem to start moving the needle. So there still is a gap. But another really important thing that I want to notice, or want to note, is that for every single group in 2014, every single group has a higher average deal size than what they did in 2014. So, it is kind of the idea that the rising tide builds up all boats. So, investing in investing in quality doesn't mean that others are necessarily disadvantaged. So we had a really great conversation about this in our breakout group, but this is, I think, a really good example of, data is not the solution. Data brings the problem to the fore, data brings awareness, programs bring solution, data tracks, and the process starts over again. And I'm really excited to be presenting this evaluation of this type of approach for the Entrepreneurial Services Program. Any questions?
What is the breakdown of these groups that you're showing here by what they actually did? Was it manufacturing? Was it websites? What?
Yeah.
Because when you're looking at this here, you can say, yeah, they're getting less money, but if they were working on some form of website versus the non-minority group was working on a manufacturing company, there's obviously going to be a lot less money. So,
that is true. So his point is that maybe gender or ethnicity groups tend to concentrate in industries that have a lower deal size, which is something that we looked at and it was a concern because, so the industry that gets the highest average deal size, by and large, is bioscience. It makes sense. They need a lot of money to do these really big projects and then they have a big impact. So on that point is when you look at the industries that females and minorities tend to aggregate in, they're all over the place and there are plenty of females and minorities in bioscience. So it wasn't really an industry effect that we were having here.
So how did you decide on the projects? I know because one thing that you mentioned, obviously, data highlights the problem and program fits the solution. How did you guys decide on the problem, the programs you wanted to do for the solution? Because Core City in your explanation, it's not specifically for minorities or just around Cleveland in general. So how did you decide the programs to create the results?
That's a great question. So, I think that there's a lot of, so we're an organization that helps startups, so we focus a lot on market validation. So we do a lot of questions, and I'm going to be honest, it's questions to what do funders want to fund? When you bring this issue up, what will funders fund? And then what will communities want? So with this Core City program that you mentioned, it's new, so we're still doing iterative process. So when we kind of have an evaluation of, okay, this is the type of program. We know that we want to impact people in disadvantaged communities. So here's kind of a step one of the program. Then at the end, you do an evaluation. What did you like? What didn't you like? What do you want to change? How else could we edit? How else could we change it? So this is actually an evolution of sort of step one of, what you know is you want to impact disadvantaged communities. And so then you target, you do some baselines, some baseline surveys, you create a program, and then you evolve that program based on the feedback that you get. I don't know if that's, okay. Other questions? Yeah, sorry.
So what we can't tell is the number of deals that were done and whether the volume of deals in the male non-minority still far outstrips the female minority deals.
Oh, it definitely does. For sure it does. So overall, and I have some more stats on that, I have stats on our number of clients. So while we were increasing average deal size, we were still increasing the number of diverse clients as well. So in 2014, the Entrepreneurial Services Program had 23% female clients. By 2016, it's 32%. For minority clients, it went from 22 to 27%. And so overall, diverse clients went from 38 to 48%. Is that empiric? Absolutely not. But again, it always depends on what your benchmark is. If you look at the industry average, we're doing a lot better. But that's part of the goal as well is, we're trying to address sort of here we're addressing the average deal size, but we're also seeing an increase in the number of deals as well by having more clients, yeah.
And the follow-up is total dollars flowing into those segments. Is the total dollars flowing into female and minority growing?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's growing in all yes, because it's growing in all sectors, right? So I'd have to look at the growth rates between, but I mean, the venture capital being deployed in the region is generally, I mean, especially, it depends on if you look at exits as well, because then will have really big, some of those exits are really big, so you'll see big swings, but if you kind of take those out, then you really see an upward progression.
What have you done to put any sort of processes in place for sustainability to keep this going long term?
So I have to give a shout out to the funder of especially like the Core City program is the Cleveland Foundation. So, partnering with people that have an incentive to continue those programs. And then I can only speak for Jumpstart, but I know that inclusion is, when in our performance evaluation, inclusion is one of the goals. Every single person at Jumpstart has to have an inclusion goal. So, that it's baked into the way that we operate to care about programs like this. And I mean, I think that's naturally that somebody has anyway, but I think that kind of formalizing it like that, really encourages that we continue to see progress on this. Other questions?